All right, let me see if I can get this thing to straighten out. How are we doing? Okay, we're on. Hello, everyone. I just gave away that I put on a sweater so I would look slightly professional and have sweatpants on the bottom because what else is quarantine life? Okay. We are going to do a live today that I am very excited about, everybody. Gals are coming. Okay. Ooh, that's not working. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. It's okay. I've been wearing the same pants since like 7 a.m.
I just don't. Oh, I mean, I've been in sweatpants all day. I just don't know how else to do anything anymore.
I know I feel like on all my lives my hair's wrapped because I haven't had my hair done in months. Months and
Right.
months and months and months. I'm very excited to talk to you today. I'm
I'm so
very
excited too. Will you? Will you introduce? I mean, we're sitting here. Will you introduce yourself to everyone so we can begin?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi from Brazil. That's amazing. My name is Michelle Sahin. I am co-founder of From Privilege to Progress. And I'll tell everyone our full story. But the quick background of our story is, if you remember the video of the two Black men who were arrested in a Philadelphia Starbucks in 2018, that is how my partner, Melissa, and I started our organization. So the video went viral. We were strangers. And we realized that we had a responsibility at that point to continue the conversation and help people understand what racism looks like today. So we do speaking engagements and social media campaigns and just get everyone on the path to anti-racism with us.
Mm.
Yeah.
And how did you guys begin? Where did this all start? Obviously, the that experience in 2018, the awareness that sprung out of that about what happened at Starbucks and what happens every day brought you guys together. But what did it look like to get going on launching an anti-racism initiative?
To be honest with you, at the beginning, we didn't have a clue what we were doing. Not
Yeah.
a single idea. But what's interesting is about 2 months before that, I had been Googling how to become an activist. I was
Mm.
literally Googling it because I was since 2016, obviously, I was agitated as a person, as a Black woman. You know, the hate crimes are going up. You could almost feel it in the air. So
Mm.
I had been looking, I had been searching and trying to figure out what to do. And, the reason that we do this together and the reason that we specifically use that word privilege is because when it initially happened, um, Melissa was centered. Melissa's white.
Mm.
The media and everybody was 100% centering Melissa. Um, but I was the woman that said something. And at
Mm.
the time, I didn't have a Twitter. I didn't have a Facebook. I wasn't going to be like, it was me. I just noticed. I was like, to be honest, I was like typical. I was like typical,
Mm.
But I just kept going on with my normal life. I had friends texting me and friends from high school even that were like, I think I hear your voice in this video. And I was like, I haven't talked to you in years. How do you recognize my voice? Um,
Wow.
yeah, so people were like, oh, Michelle, the video that the scene that you told us about, it's going viral. You should say something. You should say something. But I was so uncomfortable with doing that, to be like, it was me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel right about that at all because it wasn't about me. It was about racial discrimination.
Of course, but I think what's really interesting when we start unpacking things like moving from privilege to progress, when we start unpacking unconscious bias, is to realize that, let's say, for example, for the folks watching, that it was me and you who told the story. Why would I be centered?
Because people believe you. People believe you more.
Mm.
And they, it's this racial bias. Whenever something happens to us, people say, "Are you sure?" I mean, I've been gaslit my whole life. Are you sure that
Mm.
really happened? Are you sure that was racist? Oh, they didn't really mean to. I mean, people that even knew me were like, "Well, Starbucks has a right to remove anyone from their space." And I'm like, "Do you hear yourself?" There were people all around me not buying coffees, but the two Black
Mm.
guys in the corner, they were targeted for doing the exact same thing that the
Right.
white guy next to me had been sitting there. He was there for 45 minutes. He
Yes.
never bought a coffee.
And that I think is what's really interesting, and something I'd like to offer for people watching is if you've ever had the instinct to, you know, as you're saying, when someone says to you, are you really sure? Are you sure that was it? Are you sure you're not being sensitive? I always like to remind women, like, when a man says something to you and you know it has an inappropriate sexual undertone, you know what the difference is. And if you've ever had an experience like that, think about how that feels. Think about knowing the difference between, like, hey, I like your outfit, and like, hey, I like your outfit. Like, we know the difference, okay? It's not the words, it's the intention. And when we talk about a lot of activism in the ways we all work and how we have to show up for each other, and especially how, you know, women who look like me need to kind of collect our own, I'm like, listen, if you've ever had the experience of being on the unwanted you know, end of attention from a man, and you know how frustrating it is to have someone question that from you, be reminded that our friends who happen to be Black women, like, I'm pretty sure you know what your experience is walking around in your own body. You know what is and is not racist, or what does and does not have racist undertones. And you're very aware of the spectrum of micro to a macro aggression. And our job should be, in the same way that we want people to listen to us as women when we have conversations about sexual permission, harassment, etc., our job should be to then listen to the women in our life, to our sisters of color, and say, talk to me about your experience. Like, teach me what it is. Teach me what to look for, so
Yep.
I can be there with you.
That's exactly what we're trying to do. And I use that example all the time. I'm like, if you went home to your husband and said, this guy at work is harassing me, he was like, are you sure he's harassing you? You wouldn't have that much trust in that relationship. And that's what we want to rebuild, that trust between white women and women of color, to say, we are in this together, but you need to look out for the things that I'm seeing, experiencing every single day. So I'm actually going to tell a bit of that story, because it was actually instinct and intuition that made me realize what was going on. So
Yeah, how did you know when, because you said the guy, the white guy who'd been there for 45 minutes without ordering a coffee didn't have anybody coming at him about sitting in the cafe. So how did you realize what was going on?
I think when you're a person of color, you have like a sixth sense for racism. Like, you just, like, I can, it's funny, I can tell when like a guy's looking at me and he is interested in me. I can also tell when someone's looking at me because they don't like my skin color. Like, I could physically feel that energetic difference.
Yes.
So I had been in Philly for 5 years. I had lived here, and I would avoid that Starbucks purposely because it was never diverse. It was in the richest part of the city. So unfortunately, in the gentrified whitest part of the city, because Philly is a very Black city, but that Starbucks specifically is not diverse. So I would walk an additional 4 blocks to another Starbucks deeper in the city just to be in a more diverse coffee shop. So I decided to, for some reason, my body just said, move to the Starbucks that day. And I'm just listening to myself. I said, I don't know why I possibly want to go back here this day, but I'm going to go. I now believe divine intervention, because my great grandfather and grandfather were activists in Ghana. My great uncle was the president of Ghana, and we're all about just liberating people. And it's just, I believe that it's literally in my blood. So I went to the Starbucks this day. I walk in, same scene. I'm like, all right, I'm the only Black woman here. Go figure. Whatever. I'm already here. Let me just sit down and pay attention, or, you know, mind my business. And about 45 minutes later, the 2 guys walk in, and I was watching them. They were super, super adorable. I was like, yes. I'm like, cute guys walking in the cafe. Finally, people that like look like me. I'm like, yes, this is great. So I had been like literally checking them out, and I'm watching them, and they go up to the barista and they say, can I use the bathroom? And she said, no, it's for paying customers only. And they said, okay. And they sat down. That was it. Nothing else happened. And she walked away, and she was like mouthing something to herself. And my first thought, my first gut said, she just said something racist. I don't know why. I said, Michelle, now you're being prejudiced. Maybe she forgot some simple syrup in the back. How do you know what she's saying? Like, now you're just making things up in your head, right? Because we have to check ourselves when we have those biased thoughts. But Sophia, my first thought was, she is saying something racist. So I talked myself out of it. I'm like,
Can I just for 1 second though say something about that?
yeah,
If you don't mind, and I don't
yeah,
mean to interrupt you, but what I want to press on for people watching you tell the story right now is how important both of those things are. You felt something, like you really intrinsically felt an energy while you watched the way someone was looking at someone else and they were looking across a racial line and you felt it. And I think it's incredibly important, especially for women, to acknowledge their intuition because we've been gaslit our entire lives into thinking our
yep,
intuition is wrong.
yep,
And I also really respect that you're willing to share the part of the story where you're like, I need to check myself. Maybe I'm being biased in a way. Maybe I'm maybe I'm putting this into a place it doesn't need to be. Those are the things we always need to do when interacting in spaces. Feel and acknowledge your intuition and also make sure you're taking stock and checking yourself. And as long as you do both, you can go forward into the next
yes,
bit of whatever interaction you're about to have in a very neutral place where you're observing, but you're also not denying what you're seeing. And
exactly.
I was like, you're dropping knowledge and you're gonna speed right through it. Like, because you're getting to the part of the story that gets publicly interesting. But I just think it's such a critical thing to remind people, and especially the women watching us talk about this, that your intuition really, really matters. You know your experience, so you know when you see it mirrored around you.
Exactly. It's the biggest takeaway that I got from therapy. My therapist was like, Michelle, it sounds like you pretty much always know the right answer, but you're doing the opposite. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
I was like, oh, that's all I need to do. Just listen to myself all the time. And my life will be just automatically better. And it is.
But
um,
that's such a hard thing to do in a world
and
that has in every bit of conscious messaging and sort of subconscious messaging out there told so many people, and women especially, that they can't trust their intuition. They have to
yes,
be nice and they have to be polite and they have to go along with things. And so I think I I get I get why you're like, oh, that's all it takes is listening to myself, because
right.
it seems like an insane thing to do, but it's actually the most logical thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And in that day, I said to myself, within about 5 minutes, the cop showed up. And I was like, no, I was right. I was
Wait,
right.
so you heard she muttered something, you had that gut feeling, and then you said, maybe not. I'm just gonna like take a breath and sit here and watch. And there was no other interaction between the barista and those boys. The police just showed up.
The police showed up. And I
Wow.
was like, so, like the information
Wow.
was released. She actually called the cops 120 seconds after they got there. So it was pretty much immediate. Like literally 2 minutes went by and she called the cops. So that's why they showed up so quickly. And I was thinking to myself, this is weird. Like nothing's been going on since I've been here. So I'm trying to eavesdrop because I'm thinking, ooh, maybe something happened earlier in the day and there's some drama going on. Maybe they're following up on something even from the day before. I'm trying to figure out why they're there. So
It's
I'm
so
leaning in.
fast that you can't even imagine the two things are related.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. I'm like, what's going on? Like this is interesting. I lean in and I heard her lie. And I heard her say, those two guys in the corner are refusing to leave. And I was like, oh my God. I please, Lord, I cannot see an act of police brutality in front of me because they didn't ask any questions. They didn't ask any follow-up questions. They said, which two? And she pointed. And I look over at Dante and Rashawn. They look at me. I look at the cops. It was like the two, like me and them were noticing the cops. And the three of us are like, why are they walking towards them? Like this, what's going on, right? So I start sweating. Like if you've ever had a panic attack, it's like you feel like you're about to do something, but you don't know what you're gonna do. Like my thought was, okay, I'm gonna do something, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. But like I remember physically looking at my hands and doing this because like when I have a panic attack, my hands start getting tingly and like start getting kind of like clammy. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I start sweating, I start shaking. So I stood up and I start kind of like walking like towards the cops, which is a risk for me because I'm a Black woman and I'm about to go confront these officers who are arresting Black guys for not buying a coffee. And what's frustrating to me is, again, the white guy next to me had been there 45 minutes. He didn't buy a coffee. I saw a white girl mid-jog come in, use the bathroom, and leave. I remember she had on purple headphones. And I remember thinking to myself, I think it's fascinating when people just go in and use the bathroom, because as a person of color, sometimes you police your own body. I would never do that. I go in and I buy something at Starbucks just so there isn't attention on me. Like, even if I don't want something, I buy something because I don't want to look like a freeloader, like, or whatever.
Mm.
So I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if she works here part-time, that she just knows the code, or I wonder if she's here so often that they just let her use the bathroom. Because I was like, that's interesting.
Mm.
So I'm noticing these things going on around me. So when this is happening, I'm like, no, there's nothing to this but racial discrimination. Nothing. So I stand up. 2 cops, turn to 4, turn to 6, turn to 8. 8 police officers showed up to arrest these guys for essentially not buying a coffee. They stood their ground. They were like, why are you asking us to leave? You need to explain it. This doesn't make sense. We're waiting for a friend, who, by the way, showed up in that moment, who was a white man, who said, how is this not obviously racial discrimination happening right now? So I start yelling. Like, I don't know what else to do besides be yelling at people. And they were like, what's going on? And I said, they're being arrested for not buying a coffee. That's what's happening right now. So that's when people started
Wow.
filming. And I walk up right to one of the cops, and I'm physically shaking. And I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you arresting them? And he goes, go ask the barista. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
all right. I mean, I guess you don't have any accountability or responsibility to explain why. I mean, maybe they don't have to tell me, but it's like, is this how this works? Can I just call 911 and you remove anyone from my space? Is she your boss? Like, that's what I was like, what? So I said, all right, you're allowing me to go confront someone, which is not de-escalating the situation whatsoever. So I walk right up to her and I go, why'd you call the cops? Again, it's very fake damsel in distress voice. She was like, I really can't say. And I was like, oh, I can say. I watched the entire thing happen from beginning to end, to the point where they were actually handcuffed behind their backs and escorted and put into a squad car and taken to jail for like 12 hours for not buying a coffee. I remember being outside and I did one of these to them because I couldn't get them out of the car, but I was like, I see you. I don't know. I can't help you, brothers, you know. So her face gets flush red. Immediately her chest and her face get bright red. And I go, did you feel like your life was in danger? And she ignored me and she like walked down the Starbucks aisle. I was like, oh, hell no. So I followed her and I was like, did you feel like you were being threatened? And she completely ignored me. She wouldn't even look at me. So I yelled at her. I told her she was an effing coward. I walked back to my table. I'm packing up all my stuff, and all these like white women are staring at me because there was a lot of white women in there that day. And there was a white girl we're now friends, my friend Jody. She was like, her lip was quivering. I was like, oh my God, if she cries, I'm gonna cry. Another girl was like, after she was following my lead. I was packing up, and she looked at me. She was like, yeah, we're gonna pack up our stuff now, right? And like leave. But the only other person to stand up and actually say something that day was Melissa. Only other person. She was like, I was just here. I was here for 4 hours the other day. No one ever asks me to leave. And you know why. White woman. So we pretty much staged a walkout. We go outside. She asks me if the caption to Twitter is okay. I just said yes. I didn't even look at it. I was like, yeah, whatever. Just, I don't know. Like post it. Again, I wasn't really on social media. And then I only knew it went viral because so many people were sending it to me. Because they were like, is this your voice? Is this your voice? Oh my God, you just told me about this. So Melissa actually found me. She tracked me down through a random text message. She found me and she was like, we need to meet up. Everyone is bombarding me with media and they don't even know that you were the one. So we met up that following Monday. And she looked at me. She was like, I feel like we're long lost best friends. And we were like, what? We showed up with pens and paper because we were like, okay, we have to do something, right?
Yeah.
And then we just brainstormed for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it transformed. And the reason we use social media is because when she posted it, it broke through the segregated networks. Most of the people that she followed were white. You know, people say when a Starbucks shows up in a neighborhood, you know that the neighborhood's about to be gentrified because so many white people go to Starbucks. So, I mean, people from Germany, from Australia were reaching out to us like, oh my God, I saw, we were like, holy crap, this is huge. This is huge. And I mean, maybe it would have got a lot of attention if I posted it, but we believe that it got so much attention so quickly because Melissa posted it and she's white. And she was actually on Don Lemon the one night, like right after it happened. And the caption under her name said, Starbucks, Starbucks something says that this doesn't happen to white people, as if that was like news. She was like, what do you mean? Of course it doesn't. But how is this news though? But it is. To so many people, it is news. But after that, it was kind of beautiful in the sense that people started paying attention to what racism looks like. And that was like the first video of the long string of videos of women being caught on video, calling the cops on us for not doing anything. It was like the woman calling the cops on the girl selling water. The woman called the cops on the former Obama staffer for moving into his apartment. Like, what kind of call is that even? Like, someone's moving into my apartment and you call the cops? Like, someone's furnishing someone's apartment for free. Like, what kind of, like...
Right. It's so strange. All this expensive stuff keeps being brought into this house. Something must be wrong. You're like, excuse me?
What? Like...
It's insane.
Insane. But it was what we realized is we think that our Starbucks video was the first video that people were like, you know what? Maybe I do see it more often. You do. You do. You just don't recognize it. So you need to first look at the biases that you have within yourself. And then you're going to start noticing it. I mean, it's going to be like, you're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see it everywhere. So that's what we do. And here we are. It's been over 2 years and we're just plugging away. And it's been an incredible journey.
And for people who are watching who are likewise frustrated, who want to be involved, who want to know how best to show up, what would you say? Because you've been doing this work. So I would imagine you're also looking at the landscape and you know what's working and what isn't.
Education. I think people need to first and foremost educate themselves. I grew up Ghanaian American, but I grew up in a white town. I learned nothing. I didn't even know the word or phrase systemic racism until my 20s, until after I was out of college. I learned about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Jackie Robinson, as if they're like the only 3 Black people that ever existed, like before. You know what I mean? Like, I learned nothing. I didn't understand that America wasn't America without slavery. Like, I didn't quite like, I didn't get that. I didn't understand that the racism was created to make money off of our bodies. I didn't understand that.
Yes.
When you have African parents who don't know the history of this country and you come here and you go to a white school, you're just as much in the dark as the white kids around you. So when white people tell me, you know, I don't have any bias, I'm like, you do, because I had it even. Like,
and that's where I think so much of the danger of it comes from, is it comes from a lack of information. It comes from a piece of a story and not the whole truth.
correct.
And I think that the pieces of the story rather than the whole truth are told because the whole truth is painful and it's ugly. It's hard to admit as human beings that we could do that to each other.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to look in the mirror and think that is such an intense cruelty that I can't fathom. Could part of that be in me?
Right.
But I think we do a disservice when we're unwilling to acknowledge generational inheritance. And it is impossible to inherit traditions and genes and places and not inherit bias.
Yes.
And it changes, but it exists. And something that it really made me think about for this conversation, you know, when we were all going back and forth about like, what are we going to talk about and what's going to happen?
Right. Yeah.
One of the questions was, you know, what areas of whiteness do you want to explore? And when did you realize you were white?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what's fascinating is that it's less so a realization like, I'm a white person. Like I would be identified that way. It's more, I had no idea how much was identified for me that isn't identified for other people.
Right.
I haven't lived your experience. I haven't lived the experience of women in my life. I've learned their experience and then gone, wow, that would never happen to me. Like, think about the beauty industry. I've never had to wonder if I'd be able to find a foundation that would match my skin. I've never had to think about, would a sunscreen turn my face another color after application? It's not a refusal to acknowledge someone's experience. It's a not even knowing it's an experience until you learn it. And then you go, well, but what, why do some people have beauty products made readily available to them? Why, to take it to a more serious place, why is the maternal mortality rate for Black mothers 4 times that of white mothers? Why? How are we talking about environmental justice if we're not understanding that environmental justice is deeply racialized, and that so many of the health outcomes we're now seeing in this time of COVID, we see higher incidence of death from COVID for Black people because so many of these people have or live in communities that are environmentally threatening. So you look at heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, because of toxicity. The proximity to toxicity that people have been forced into because of things like white flight and redlining, and it is everywhere around us, but we don't learn it in school, because learning it in school would require, I think, a reckoning that so many people are terrified to have.
Well, they would have to somewhat change their lives. And that's hard. You know, it took me a while to realize, I was like, holy crap, I actually grew up in segregation. I was like, whoa, that's weird. It's weird that I was a Black girl that grew up in segregation. And I realized, you know, for whatever reason, you know, well, being African, I was accepted in that community, but so many people weren't accepted and were pushed out. I remember even when a Black family would move in, they would move out quickly. They would only be there for a couple months.
Why do you think it was different for your family?
I think white people treat Africans differently. Actually, I don't think I know. So I would do like sociological experiments myself. I could feel racism, right? Like in a group or whatnot. I could tell when someone was overlooking me, not wanting to look me in the eye, not wanting to match my eye, just completely acting like that I didn't exist. And when I would say that I was African or I was Ghanaian, suddenly they would meet my gaze. They'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And all of a sudden, I went from being invisible to being interesting. And
or exotic.
Exotic.
It's a fetishizing, though, of your identity, which I think a lot of white people also don't realize.
They do not. I would feel it for men all the time. All the time. I'm like, if this was like 1800, this would not be a good situation. Like, I would literally feel that. So I started holding on to that, to be honest with you. I was like, okay, this works. I can ward off just some of the racism. And so I started to hold on to that identity and be like, oh, no, I'm African. I'm not like them. Because when people would tell me I wasn't like them, well, you're not really Black, Michelle. You're like us. You're an Oreo. You're not really Black. Like, I don't see you that way. And when I realized that work to try to mentally and emotionally survive that environment, I absorbed the racist messaging and I went along with it. Like, I had some serious self-identity issues with being Black because I knew that it was wrong. I deep down knew that it was wrong, but I was like, but if I go against it, then I'm the Debbie Downer, then I am like them, then I'm going to experience more racism, then they're not going to like me, they're not going to accept me. And it wasn't until I was 23 when I had my first racist cop experience that I said, Michelle, it doesn't matter how many white friends you have. It doesn't matter how many white men you date. You are a Black woman in America. And at any point in time, you will be treated as such. You have to stop playing yourself. Like, I want people to understand that's how deep and pervasive racism goes. It can turn you against yourself. And it did at one point.
Yeah. I mean, think about how many, again, to take it back for women who look like me to have some sort of, what am I looking for the word, like relative understanding of what you're saying. How many girls have been so proud to wear the badge? Oh, you're not like the other girls.
Yeah.
You're a guy's girl. That's misogyny. That's
Right.
us being told that we're somehow special because we are not fill in the blank like other women are. And what it does is it makes us look down on other women. It makes us judgmental of other women. It makes us
Yes.
feel as though we're in competition for a hierarchical position above other women. And any oppressed group of people has had some sort of othering placed on them that then can create a really detrimental cycle of, well, if I can distance myself from the people they say I'm like, maybe I'll be safer because I'll have more proximity to their power over there.
Correct.
And when we realize that we have internalized biases, that we have internalized misogyny, that you had to come face to face with the ways you had internalized racism, like it's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. I've been trying to figure out how to. I'm trying to write a book, and I'm trying to figure out how to position it. And
Mm.
the older I get, the more I realize there are so many Black people who had the same thoughts as me.
Mm.
We have colorism within our communities. The lighter you are, so the closer you are to looking like the oppressor, the better you are. People don't even realize that that's a form of Stockholm syndrome.
Mm.
Why is it better to be lighter skinned? What does that do for you? You have you're like, oh, I'm one shade closer to that ivory tower, right?
Mm.
And it's just fascinating. So it's even for me, like, yes, our audience, it is geared towards white people, but everybody needs to do this education.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to do this education. Just because you're Black doesn't mean that you just know what's going on. It doesn't mean that at all. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
find out about environmental racism until 2 years ago. I was heartbroken to find out that
Mm-hmm.
there could be a place in Louisiana nicknamed Cancer Alley because of how
Mm-hmm.
much pollution is going. I was like, what? What is going on? So when you start to see it everywhere, I think for people it's scary because it's like you're gonna have to start. Once you start learning, you can't not talk about it. It's impossible. Like when I was a senior in high school, I did my project on the Holocaust because for a whole year I learned about World War II and what was going on. And the more I educated myself, the more empathy I built. And so to me, it was just a no-brainer. I was like, we need to talk about what happened to the Jewish people. I did my entire senior project on it. I remember actually within about 5 minutes, I knew I had passed because the teachers were just like, what is this girl doing? I can't believe she's talking about this. It's so deep. And I'm like, yes, we need to talk about the human suffering to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't happen again. And in
Yes.
America, we need to come to a reckoning. It's something that America, I think we're starting to get there. I see it happening. Like, okay, white people, they want to know, they want to read, they want to do more. But I think we also need to talk about slavery and the reckoning there. I mean, just today on one of our posts, some woman was like, "Well, I believe that there probably were some happy slaves. You could, I, girl." She was like, you could. People find happiness wherever they are. I'm like, that's not happiness. That's Stockholm syndrome. Like, until we really come to terms with the reality of what happened in this nation, we can't move forward. I
Mm-mm.
really don't believe that. I do.
I
There are people
don't.
that, yeah,
I don't either. And I think it's unconscionable to act like it was also so far behind us. I think that to not be willing to see the racist roots that carried through hundreds of years of slavery, that carried through the Jim Crow era, that carried through to the fact that 4 Black men have been lynched in the last week in America.
right.
Like,
And
don't
no
you
one's
dare
talking about
tell me that some
it. Right.
like beautiful young boy who had everything ahead of him in his life, who was happy, whose family reported that he hadn't been sad maybe ever, who was found quite literally hanging from a tree
Yep.
near the site of a protest. Don't tell me
Yep.
that's a suicide. Don't you dare. Don't
Don't you
do
dare.
that.
And
Don't
every
do
one of
that.
them, I couldn't believe
And
it. Everyone is being labeled a suicide.
this is not a coincidence. And it's incredibly frustrating. And for me, one of the things that I struggle to understand is why so many people don't want to look at it. I
Yeah.
think if you think about it as an individual, if you deny a part of who you are, let's say we talk about it on the mental health spectrum,
Mhm.
and all you ever show people is your best days and how happy you are and that things are great, but you actually have some depression that runs in your family, and you hide your sad days and you're ashamed of them, and so you don't ask for help. You are presenting yourself as a fractional human to the world, and you are not opening yourself up with vulnerability and courage to the love that you could be given, the support that you could be given, the things you could learn if you process through your sadness, the the dark side of the darker sides of us, the endarkenment is required for the enlightenment. And
Yep.
if we don't on a, that's the macro, right? The one person's experience. And if we don't expand, or the micro rather, and if we don't expand to the macro, and we don't say we've got to look at the roots of the dark things that were done in our past, the like the evil deeds that got us here, we're missing the totality. We're missing then where we could go. We are bringing only a fraction of what's possible into the future for all of these future generations, and that is one of the things that worries me here. If we don't really acknowledge that this country became a global superpower on the backs of Black people, then it's a farce. Then I don't know what it is. And I really struggle to understand why people are unwilling to acknowledge that, because it's not a theory, it's a fact. Do you have thoughts as to why, doing this work and being, 2 years into your organization, do you look at that fear or desire to avoid reality and see kind of a reason for it?
Um, I still can't find a reason for it that I can see with my eyes. I can only know what I read in books. I can only speculate from books like White Fragility, where there's this good bad binary, and people
Mm,
think if you rate, they think of being racist as like being called a racist is worse than actually being racist.
mm,
They see that as so terrible that they cannot bring their minds to admit that they could have possibly done anything ever in their entire lives that was remotely racist.
mm,
Um, that's as much as I can try to understand where that could possibly come from. Is just that not wanting to be seen as a bad person. Um, so we're trying to move people through that. It's by age 2 or 3, people need to understand that by age 2 or 3, children understand that it's better to be white in this country.
mm,
You absorb those messages by age 3. Even if you as a parent have never said anything racist in the first 3 years of your kid's life, they go to preschool, you don't know what those other parents are saying to their children. Media, magazines, I mean, the messaging is all around us. So by age 3, that means if you are not actively taking a look at those biases, those hidden biases, they're going to find ways to be shown. And it's going to be unintentionally harming people.
mm.
And I think when you could get people to understand that, listen, this is just a fact. This country was built on white supremacy. That's just is what it is. These are the cards that we have been dealt. I don't like it. You don't like it. None of us like it. Sometimes I think to myself, I should have been born like 700 years ago before all this shit started. I'm like, I was born in the wrong era. But then I think, no, I must have been born here at this time for this reason on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everybody has a part to play that we can actually change the country. We can change the direction of the country. I think that's freaking amazing. I think that
Yeah.
is so powerful that you can do something with that. And that
Mm.
fear of being labeled a certain thing that's stopping you from making any progress in your life, that is stopping you from being a part of the solution, that is stopping you from being in conversations like we are and actually moving forward. If you can't be part of the solution, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
If you're silent.
And I think it's really important, as you said earlier, educate yourself. There are so many resources available, but also show up to have a conversation and be clear. Like, I try to be clear with anyone I speak to about these issues, like I'm doing work, and if there's something I miss, just let me know.
Right.
Like, just let me know. I, I don't, I think that the fear, so much of what I hear right now from people who haven't been on this, journey for as long, or who haven't been in these activist circles, who are waking up to this real reality, as you said, who it's the videos that are changing things that have been all around us, but whatever it takes,
Right.
the veil has come off and people are going, well, I don't know where to start and I'm so afraid to say the wrong thing. And I just want to be like, you are going to say the wrong thing.
Of course you are.
You just have to own that you're going to say the wrong thing, and then show up and do so with enough humility to say, I believe that I'm here for the right reasons. If I screw up, please just let me know so that I can do better. And like, get on with it. Because this weird obsession we have with American individuality, I think can really distract us from our role in systems. And it can also really tell us a lie that we don't live within a community.
Yes.
And the whole point of being in a country is to have countrymen, right? It's to have community. And if we don't look out for each other, we're missing it. Yep. And if we get so obsessed with like, well, I'm just one person, like the flip side for me of this like exceptionalism, individualism is like, I'm just one person. What can I do? And it's like, well, a lot. Look how many people didn't vote in the last election. This is why we are in this trash place that we're in now. Like you can do a lot.
Yeah.
Every single human matters. And if we could direct that energy, that presence, like here in the roll call in class, like if we could use that sort of stand up and be counted thing out in the world could look very different. It could be more fair to all of us. And when the world gets, it's not lost on me too that there's an irony. Everyone's always like, oh, well, you want to do the moral thing, and countries are businesses. And I'm like, cool, well, countries that are more moral actually have higher GDPs. So it's actually really smart financially to also not be an asshole. Like, it's weird that they go hand in hand. So, and I use the example only to say, I know there's people who are watching this who are going to be like, yeah, well, my dad says he's a social liberal, but a fiscal conservative. I'm like, absolutely not. We're not having that conversation anymore. So take that information home and fight the good fight over your dinner table. Right. But I just think it's so interesting that on every single point, if we prioritize the bettering of the community, things get better. Communities get healthier. Communities get safer. Women have better outcomes. People of color have better outcomes. Our GDP has a better outcome. It's like things do get better when we prioritize each other. And knowing that, having all the data available that proves that, I'm like, well, we've got to start showing up for each other better then.
Yep. I mean, that's really interesting what you said about community. I'm reading this book right now by Dr. Malidoma Patrice Soma. He's a West African doctor, and he spends a lot of time over here. And he says that's the one thing that he notices is really hurting America's soul is a lack of community. My mom noticed it when she came to this country. She didn't understand what postpartum depression was. And so she realized, it was like, well, so many women are by themselves after they give birth. That's crazy to me. She goes, when you give birth in Ghana, you're not alone for months. You don't cook for yourself. You don't clean for yourself. Your only job is to breastfeed your baby. That is it. And this idea of individualism is like, people say, I'm just one person. Melissa, we're like, yeah, we were just two people too. We were just two regular people who saw a thing and did something, and then the world was talking about it. Every time you say something, people are listening to you every single time you speak. Yes. I mean, recently I was playing with my best friend's baby, and I was doing something, to me it was something very small and minute. And I watched, and she literally was trying to do the exact same move that I was making. She's like 1 year and like a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's trying to copy me exactly. Like, that's just part of human nature. When I'm around my friends for a long time, I start talking like them, like acting like them. And I'm like, okay, I'm spending way too much time with you, right? Because my mannerisms are the same as yours. But people don't realize how easily influence who we actually are.
Mm.
So every time you speak up and say something, someone's listening to you and you are influencing someone in some way. That's why it is so important to use your voice every chance you get. You know, I say the people that do these racist murders, they don't wake up one day and decide to be a murderer. They weren't born a racist. But you know what happens? They continue saying racist things and it goes unchecked. They make a racist joke and no one says anything. And every time they make a racist comment, it reaffirms that what they're saying is truth. And it builds and it compounds and it escalates and it gets worse, it gets deeper. And then eventually, years and years later, then you end up actually killing a man. But it doesn't start there. It starts very, 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 very small.
Right.
And if white people aren't speaking up and interrupting those moments, even if it's just a joke, if you're not interrupting those moments every time, you're contributing to someone potentially down the road hurting someone that looks like me strictly based off of skin color.
Yeah.
Because that person is going to believe you more than they believe me. They're going to stop doing it. If you reflect about what they're saying, it's like, okay, maybe if all these white people are telling me that I'm racist, maybe I'm racist. But when I say it, they're going to be like, oh, you're just an angry black woman. We would already have equality if it were up to us.
Right.
Things would be different if it were up to us. I mean, look at what is happening right now. There are actually laws being changed and policies being put into place because we have come together.
Yes.
The largest civil rights movement in history.
Yes.
We couldn't do that alone. We needed everybody to come together. Like, it is, I get goosebumps. I literally get goosebumps when I think of the pictures that I saw, like sea of white people, like a sea of white people saying Black Lives Matter. I'm like, oh my God, like this is so freaking incredible. And the other side of that is, I don't think white people were ready for the violence that they were met with at these protests. And I hope that they really understand that it's almost like we broke that unspoken bond with the police. It was like, well, we protect you if you stay silent and let us do whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I was speaking to Patrisse Cullors about how it is that, you know, Black Lives Matter as an organization and so many of us who step in as allies are having conversations around police brutality. And she said something that really gave me the chills. She said, there's a lot of white people who are saying, like, what would it mean to have a reduced police force? Like, what is, you know, defund the police? It's an agitational statement, right? It's meant to then draw attention to what we do fund and how if we reduced funding, if we reduced giving over 55% of our budgets to one organization and instead reinvested like we used to in schools, communities, treatment facilities, et cetera, again, communities would get healthier. Crime has been going down. Those budgets have been going up. It doesn't quite make sense. And we were discussing it, and she said, you know, what's interesting to me is that so many white people don't realize they already live in communities with no police.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my God. And she was like, when was the last time you saw a cop in your neighborhood? And I was like, never. I don't know. I don't. Like, I see like cops driving down Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, but like, almost never, you know. And she said, think about the fact that it's a luxury for you, that you only interact with a police officer if you need help. Like, they only come if you call. That was a really illuminating statement, because I think a lot of people have forgotten what it would be like to readjust a system so that they did only come when we call, so that they weren't out to meet quotas, so that they weren't trying to like hit markers. Like the incentive is to punish people. So if we change the incentive, if we readjusted our budgets and thus reduced stress on police and didn't expect them to be social workers, grief counselors, addiction counselors, rape counselors, if we actually sent all of those people out to the places they were needed, and all those things got taken off the plate of these law enforcement officers, like communities would be different,
Yep.
systems would be different, people's harm would be reduced.
Mhm.
Because you are right. I think a lot of people who look like me were really shocked at what they were met with at those protests. They were not
Yep.
prepared to be standing with their hands up, getting hit with batons, and standing with their hands up and getting shot with rubber bullets.
Mhm.
And, you know, people were not prepared to be getting tear gassed in front of the White House for peacefully
Yep.
protesting. You know, I heard so many people saying, you know, the tear gas on American citizens is like it's a violation of the Geneva Conventions. And it's like, yeah. So what are we going to do about it?
Right.
You know, what are we going to do about this stuff? And it is up to us to envision better systems, but we can only, again, envision better systems if we're willing to look at the total of what we know about ourselves and our history.
Mhm.
And if we keep turning away, if we keep trying to deny that what's right in front of us is right in front of us, we're going to keep reinforcing systems that hurt people.
Yep. I mean, it's just amazing to me how people don't see how much they're trying to protect their power,
Mm.
their overarching power in our communities. Because last month, even just in Pennsylvania here, in the Capitol, white guys with AK-47s were storming up the Capitol steps with loaded guns
Mhm.
because they wanted haircuts. So I'm gonna get my hair done too. I'm gonna get my hair done. I am not like what is how is it that you can watch grown men literally screaming at the top of their lungs in cops' faces with guns, and 3 weeks later, the same cops are now armored as if they're literally going to war, and they're hurting people with no weapons, with
Mm.
signs. I saw a video of a girl today that was like, "What are you putting armor on against, for paper cuts? We have signs." This really young white girl that was like, "This doesn't make any sense." I want people to understand the privilege in that, and also the
Yeah.
fact that they are trying to protect that power so badly. Guys wanting
Yeah.
haircuts, that's not scaring them. Guys wanting haircuts, they're like, whatever, they'll go home. But it didn't put a risk at them losing their power.
Right.
Now we're asking for things to be different, and they're like, no, 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 no. We want to maintain this power, and we're going to try to scare you into backing down. So we're going to tear gas you. We're going to shoot with rubber pellets. We are going to hurt peaceful protesters to protect that right. That is how serious this is.
Mm.
Do we really want to go through this again?
And we have to acknowledge the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't feel safe standing in front of a guy with an AR-15 screaming in my face.
No.
So why does he get less of a response from officers? Like that, I don't understand. I have a friend, and by the way, I want to clarify for viewers who haven't done the research on these things. A rubber bullet is not a gentle thing. They kill
Oh
people
no.
pretty frequently. They're deadly. They actually are a rubber coating over a metal shell.
I
Um, yeah, they're really terrifying and dangerous. They've been given a gentle name so that they seem um, less dangerous, truly. And I have a very good friend here in Los Angeles who was shot in the face with a rubber bullet, and the side of his face is shattered, and he had to have reconstructive surgery. And there was a girl whose photo I posted. It's so sad to say I can't remember what city, because this happened everywhere. She was 20 years old, I believe. She got shot in the chest with a rubber bullet and she died. An unarmed protester. And these conversations are important for us to have because, again, to your point, when we look at the lack of sort of sameness in response, why is it that all of us asking for equality are deemed more dangerous than people with assault weapons who want haircuts? Why? And that's the kind of thing that I would hope that people who've listened to us have this conversation ask themselves afterwards. You know, ask yourself, why is it that at a coffee shop two young boys who happen to be Black will get the police called on them for nothing but a white man or a white woman doing nothing, literally nothing, just sitting around, won't. You know, these are things to ponder. These are things to investigate in yourself and to look at them through the lens of your own experience, and also then try to look at them through the lens of other people's experience and listen to other people about their experiences. And perhaps rather than being so uncomfortable recognizing whatever relative privilege you have, think, oh, if I'm safe in this scenario, wouldn't I want other people to be safe in this scenario also? If I wouldn't get, arrested for this, why should anyone get arrested for this? Those feel like relatively basic questions, but in a system that was not designed to treat everyone equally, they are not. They are agitational questions, and they are hopefully motivating questions. Sorry, my dog literally just ran through here like a wild, and she just ran through the den like a hyena, and I imagine was very loud, but if not, then only over here, and she
It wasn't that loud.
startled me. Oh, okay. I'm like, please stop moving. Okay. But yeah, I just hope that people will be willing to sit with it and examine it, and obviously follow your organization and do some self-education, and then figure out how to show up. I know we're gonna get kicked off of here in about 90 seconds. So I just looked at the time. I was like, oh God. Is there anything specific, like a call to action, that you would like our audience today to do or follow?
I want people to keep up the energy that they have been that they've been displaying for the past 3 weeks. This is the beginning. I want you to still prioritize your mental health and prioritize your peace and rest, but the revolution needs you. So you need to rest and continue on the work, because I absolutely believe that we can change this country. Like I believe that 1,000,000%. But it's going to take every single person to at least even just be aware. So talk to your friends, your family, educate yourself. The 3 things we always say are: educate yourself, speak up in your everyday life, amplify the voice of people of color. Let's just maintain energy and just keep pushing forward. I know that we can do it. We just have to stay vigilant.
I love that. Yeah, keep showing up, everybody. Keep being passionate, hold on to that, and also stay curious. If you follow your curiosity and your heart for others into these spaces, you can do a lot of good. Thank you for, following the call and your intuition. Thank you for launching yourself into the public eye as an activist, and for being so committed to doing the work, and also widening those circles and inviting so many other people in, and for being such an excellent, teacher, alongside your partner for all people, but I'll say on behalf of, women who look like me, for women who look like me, because, if the ladies really all show up together, like, the world follows. It's not lost on me that the countries doing the best in the midst of this COVID crisis right now are all run by women. I'm like, can we just take a lead from their playbook? Like, what are we doing? So,
Worlds, we got this.
Yeah, I believe in us very much, and I appreciate you, and thanks for doing this today.
I appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and sorry I had to turn the comments off. They were just getting a little nonsensical for this conversation. So when I post this, I will get your handle back in there. But I was like, we don't have to talk about TV shows right now, guys. Like, just be here with us. Just be with us. So
smart. Very, very smart. Because sometimes they actually get back to me a little bit. So.
Yeah. Also, I just want to see your face. I'm good.
Yeah. I'll talk to you.
Yes, I'll talk to you very soon. And thanks again. And have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.